Good morning and welcome to BOTB HQ in Parsons Green, South West London. My name is Christian Williams, the presenter here at BOTB, where we're here this morning to judge the latest Dream Car competition, which ran from the 13th to the 19th of July 2020. And just before I hand over to Charlie, once again, massive congratulations to last week's Dream Car winner, Muhammad Ali, winning that amazing Audi RS7 plus £20,000. I'm now going to pass over to Charlie Hanson from Onside Law, who will oversee the proceedings this morning.
My name's Charlie Hanson from Onside Law, and I'll be overseeing the judging this morning. Firstly, I can confirm that the competition data has already been sent to the auditors Wilkins Kennedy. I'd now like to introduce today's judges. First up, it's Matt Cannon.
My name's Matt Cannon. I'm senior county referee and footballer and look forward to pre-season training next month.
Thanks, Matt. If you can now use the secure link provided and mark on the screen where you think the centre of the ball should be, and then we'll come back to you at the end for you to justify your position and for a final panel decision. Next up, Nigel Hicks.
My name is Nigel Hicks. I've been a Supply League match official for the best part of 30 years. I'm an experienced Football League administrator.
Next up, Hugh Gilroy.
Good morning, my name's Hugh Gilroy. I'm a referee, mentor, tutor and observer.
Next up, Leo Donnellan.
Good morning, my name is Leo Donnellan. I'm an ex-professional football player, having been with Chelsea, Fulham and Leyton Orient.
Next up, Kieran Fitzgibbon.
Hi, my name is Kieran Fitzgibbon. I've played football for more than 30 years and I'm now a senior county referee.
Next up, Andy Braithwaite.
Thanks, Charlie. My name's Andy Braithwaite. I'm a football referee, mentor, and licensed observer.
Thanks, judges. Matt, if you could now justify your position.
Thanks, Charlie. Mine's the red cross to the left of the picture. There's three players in shot. There's a player in red in the background who's just looking in our general direction. You can't see his eyes, so he's just looking at the two players. The two players that are tussling for the ball, the player in blue is leaning back into the player in red with his arms up to protect the ball. And you can see he's lifted his right foot up, I believe, to play the ball as it's coming into him. The player in red behind his left leg is coming up again to try and play the ball. So they've come in and had a bit of a tussle, and it's difficult to know who's kicking who, but one of them is kicking them. And I've taken the two eye lines of the players and I've cross-referenced them and I've put the centre of the ball where my red cross is.
Thanks, Matt. Nigel, if you could now justify your position.
Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so we've got two players where we've got a clear sight of one eye of each of the players. They're looking across the photo. Player in the background is blurred, so we haven't really got a good view of his eyes. But both players appear to be trying to kick the ball as opposed to it dropping onto their head. So I'm looking at a line of the ball probably directly down towards their boots. The player in blue, his eyes are looking slightly up against the line of his face, so I view that the ball is slightly above his head height, and the player behind is looking over the top of that player in blue, so he's clearly got sight of the ball over the top of the player's head, and he appears to be looking pretty much parallel 90 degrees out. So that's why I have placed my green cross where I have.
Thanks, Nigel. Hugh, if you could now justify your position.
Yeah, mine's the blue cross. Two players in shot that I use the eye lines of. For me, the player in blue, sky blue, is looking relatively horizontal from his eyes, quite straight out in front of him. I felt both of them were challenging with their feet for the ball, so it was up above them. And just for me, with the red player in the background, with his neck the way it was, and from looking close at his eyes, I felt he was looking down, and where those two eye lines met, that's why I placed him across where it is.
Thanks, Hugh. Leo, if you could now justify your position.
Yes, mine's the orange cross. There's two players in shot. The player in blue is in front of the player in red, so he's kind of holding him off. I think the ball's is there to be challenged for, but he's having difficulty holding the player in red off. If you look at his arm, he's fighting for the ball, and if you look at his blue leg, it's stretched out, so he's just trying to get something on the ball. He might be trying to, in a way, hold the player in red off. I think the player in red is just coming in just to get something on the ball, so he's just challenging for the ball. I think if you look at his body shape, his legs underneath the player in blue, and he's just trying to kick his leg up to get something on the ball to put the player in blue off. I think if you look at their eye lines, the player in blue is looking straight. For me, he was looking straight in front of him, and the player in red is looking forward, across, but also slightly down. So with their eye lines and their body shapes, that's why I put them across there.
Thanks, Leo. Kieran, if you could now justify your position.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, I'm agreeing a lot with most of my colleagues. I agree with Leo there. I think the player in blue is looking horizontally across, the player in red is looking slightly down. I think the two are challenging for the ball, but I believe because the feet are already together and also taking the player in red in the background, although we can't see his eyes, his body position looks like he's looking slightly to the right of the player's feet as we're looking at him. But they've probably already made contact with the ball, and possibly the ball has just come up slightly and just off the 2 feet is just in front of them. So I've placed my ball slightly towards the two players based upon the fact that I think they'd already made contact with the ball. I've also taken the eye lines from both players, and that's why I placed my grey cross there.
Thanks, Kieran. Andy, if you could now justify your position.
Thanks, Charlie. My take on this particular picture is that the guy in blue is looking just slightly above horizontal, and the guy in red is looking slightly below horizontal, bringing to the centre of the ball here. As Kieran quite correctly said it, in my opinion, I feel that the ball is just ahead of them. I think the ball has already come in. I felt that if their legs were fully extended, outstretched, it was about to come in, but I feel that with they're both slightly bent knee, I feel that the ball has already come in. They've both tried to play it at the same time, hence the boots interlocked here. And I feel that it's literally bounced up in front of them, not coming in as it would the ball, because their gazes, one slightly above, one slightly below horizontal, is where I've placed my purple cross.
Thanks, judges. Matt, as the main judge, could you now come to a panel decision with the other 5 judges? And for your reference, the larger white cross is the calculated average of the 6 individual selections.
Thanks again, Charlie. Okay, guys, if we draw in the up and the down lines. Okay, so there's a fairly big spread from both players. I think the 4 of us think the ball is just about to be played, and I think a couple of us think the ball may well have just been played. I personally think that the 2 legs, being a right and a left footing, they're both sort of come in. I think the reason the legs are bent for me is because the red players made contact with the blue player. I'm not sure whether the ball's actually been played because they're looking so intently, the pair of them. And I personally didn't think that the blue player was looking so far down. I think that, to my view, he's got a clear view up. You know, obviously I would to mine, in line with Andy's, and up towards Nigel. And I think this player in red, again, isn't looking slow down. And I think, to me, Nigel made a good point about he's looking above his head. And I thought, as the line suggests, that he may well be looking through the back of this guy's head if the ball was low as Hughes would be. But that's my thoughts. I mean, Nigel, again, I'll come back to you since I've mentioned your name about the height of this, and have you got any further thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting people's crosses, the judges' crosses, to be that low, just because, as you say, I think the player in red would be looking at the back of the blue player's head for a low angle. I did feel that just the magnifying on the blue player's eyes, it did look like he was looking slightly up rather than down. But
yeah,
the player at the back, I did my best to try and discern what he's looking at. He just appears as though he's looking at both players at distance, and he's so blurred.
Yeah,
it's very hard to tell. But I haven't really got a lot more to add from where we are.
I mean, I'll pick up something that I think that both myself and you've said on occasions, that, you know, looking out from the player in blue, for me, the plane of his head and his eyes with no white at the top and the bottom would suggest he's looking sort of a 45-degree angle, which is why I went for sort of this line.
Yeah.
I mean, Hugh, you are the lowest. What are your thoughts on this player, especially players' view?
I guess I'm in agreement with the kind of others to the right of me, the two that are on a similar line, in that he's not looking up and he's looking across. For me, the player in the red at the back, he is looking down, and I think his head tells us that, and his eye line tells us that. And for me, that big, given where their feet were, just made me think, well, it's likely to be lower and further across. I take your point about him looking through the back of his head. I think he is to his left, so the player in red's to the player in blue's left-hand side. So I do think he is to the side of him, so he will have a view of the ball. That for me is, I just felt he was looking down. He had to be looking at the ball. Yeah.
And Kieran, you're just about closest to the players with your selection, but on the sort of same line with Leo. Have you got anything to add from what you said previously?
Yeah, I actually changed my mind when I was doing the judging. I originally had mine positioned where Leo's was, almost exactly in that position, and moved it slightly to the right because of the player at the back. I more or less agree with Leo, and I think with Andy, I do think the player in blue is looking more horizontally, slightly up, but not anywhere near 45 degrees. I think he's looking directly in front of him. I agree with you that the player in red, if you look at the player in blue's hand, his hand is almost by the shoulder of the player in red, so he's possibly to the left. That's why, although he's not looking through him, he's looking to the left. And I do think he's looking a little bit down. The only difference between myself and you really is that you, I think, thinks that they've not yet played the ball, and I thought they had played the ball. I thought because the way the feet were together. But I do think that the four towards the lower end is a better eye line from the player in blue, in my opinion.
Okay. And Leo, I mean, you're closest to the average as we have it now.
Yes, Matt. I think the player in blue, for me, he's looking directly in front of him. I don't really think he's looking too high at all. I think if you look at the player in red, I think he's looking slightly down. And if you look at the player in red, I think he's coming from behind just to kick the ball. And if you look at his leg's quite high up already. And I think the only motion maybe he can do with that leg is kind of just flick it upwards to make a connection with the ball. So I think the ball's very close to his.
Yeah, because I was half wondering whether he was actually being fouled by the red player, and he's kicked the underside of his boot. But yeah, absolutely, he could be coming down on it as well. I just thought with the right foot, if he's going to flick it. But you know, absolutely point taken. I mean, Andy, you're in the midst of this all as well. You're quite close to the average.
Yeah. Again, you got the guy in blue with his right foot and the guy in red, as you said, he's slightly to the left of him. He has got a clear view of it. He's coming in with his left foot. They've literally at the same time. As I said, all that slightly above horizontal. blue, although when I drew my lines, the lowest I was dead horizontal, and the angle that I've up across slightly above horizontal. So I can see where the guys horizontal are coming from. But as I said, I just believe that they just both flicked it at the same time. Whoever's got there first, possibly they got blue because his boots. But yeah, that's the reason why.
Okay. Well, let's look at the average. If we take Hugh out, who's the furthest at the minute, it sort of comes into the centre of four of us.
Matt, could I ask, could you just hover your circle over where your cross is? Because I think it's red against red. I'm really having trouble seeing it on the screen.
Okay. Over mine.
Yeah, just wanted to see where it is. I can't quite catch it. So there we go.
That's where I am,
I see.
just slightly further out.
Thank you.
So if I put Hugh back in, I'm the second furthest out, but I'm just I'm basically between your cross and Leo's on height, but a bit further to the left as you're looking at the photograph.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was just because it was red on red. I was having trouble picking it out. Thank you.
So by taking Hugh out, the ball hovers into the sort of the middle of four of us with Kieran's just slightly down. I'm not unhappy personally with that because I believe the eye line's fine. If we put Hugh back in and go the opposite way and take Nigel out, for example, again, I'm not unhappy with that, but I do feel it drops it a little bit too far. So has anybody any thoughts about whether we should remove an individual?
Yeah, I mean,
go on, Leo.
No, I mean, you said it's dropping too far, Matt, but you know, there's three crosses sort of on that level. Personally, I think as I said, I think he's just going to kick the ball. I think it's there just to be kicked. So I think it's lower rather than higher.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with all this, I mean, all we can do is, if we remove a player, we can obviously also move the average slightly, if we so choose to. It makes it slightly harder if we don't remove anybody, because we're then arguing our own points about whether the average should be moved close to myself, Nigel, etc., etc. So we've got to be quite careful about removal of choices, and I suppose what I'm going to ask is whether we could take a vote on whether they think anybody within this is out of the way. So, for example, I would assume from what you've said, Leo, that Hughes, because it's on roughly the line of yourself and Kieran, there'll be 3 votes to keep him in and possibly 3 votes to take him out because we're hiring, and vice versa. So can I ask any of you whether you want to see anybody else removed to have a look at it, or whether we should move the average? And my only codicil on this with Kieran is he did say originally his choice was nearer to Leo and would take the player in the background who we can't really see into view. So we could, for example, use what Kieran said and move the average slightly over to the left as we're looking at it, if we so chose. So Nigel?
I did think with Hugh removed, brought us more into that cluster and made more sense to me of the player in red behind looking over the top of the Blues head. But personal view. But with Kieran added in, it doesn't move it a massive amount down, but it does probably mean that more of the ball's obscured, to be honest, for the red.
Yeah. And Hugh?
What I was going to say previously was just along the lines of a vote. I think we've done that before. I just think similar to Leo and Kieran in terms of the eye line of that red player, and I wasn't sure comfortably that either of them had definitely played it or they weren't about to flick the ball.
Yeah.
But it's a funny one because we're all sort of split on where the red player or the blue player is looking.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as I said, if we removed yourself, there's no reason why we can't, with using the magnifier, decide that it's not where it is with you removed, but we can use the tools to bring it down to say within the group to take the cluster of 4. Obviously, it leaves Kieran lower as well. So if I remove Kieran as well, obviously it comes into the 4 of us, but again, we can drop it down on a different eye line. So I think there's plenty to discuss from that perspective. And sometimes I think with you being further to the left doesn't necessarily mean where the average isn't in a bad position for all 6 of us, our choices, because although you're further away than the rest of us, it only pulls the average over a slight amount. I mean, Leo, any more thoughts?
Yeah, no, as I said, it's just the height of it for me. So, you know, for me, the green cross is a little bit high. You know, I think we're all on that same kind of horizontal sort of level.
Yeah.
If it's in front of the foot or slightly behind the foot.
I mean, if I draw in a couple more lines, which is, you know, taking out Hugh and Nigel, obviously the blue players' field of vision is much narrower, but it's where the average is. It's smack bang in the centre of it. So
what would that do with both of us gone, being that we are out of his field of vision, out of interest?
I just think it takes it slightly to the right. As I said, if I add you back in, it's sort of slap in the middle of this green, the green vision that I put in. So by taking the 2 of you out, and I think it's because you're a little bit to the left, Q, it just brings it slightly to the right. If I take it again and leave it on there for a minute so you can hopefully all see.
But then I guess you have got 3 clustered closely to the right in Andy, Leo and Kieran.
Yeah.
Which is still half the group, kind of pulling it to the right, rightfully. I mean, I personally would rather we both went to balance it, given how you've drawn that field, because I still think that player in red's looking down.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can extend it on and take myself out, which brings it again into this vision of, but it's where do you stop? You know, and we all have our own opinions, and I think that part of the issue here is I think whether the players have played it or not, and I think I'm right in saying that Kieran and Leo both think they're imminently going to play the ball or have played the ball, which is possibly why they're slightly lower. I'm hoping I'm not, if I'm wrong in that, please put me right. So, I mean, Kieran, what do you think about removing anybody? Do you think the average gets better, worse?
Whilst I understand where Nigel and Hugh's positions are, for me, it's slightly better with them removed. It doesn't make a lot of difference, but for me, it's slightly better. I mean, look again at the 2 players' legs. I can't see their legs could get any higher than that. They're almost extended. You know, the height they've got the legs already. So I'm with Leo in thinking that I can't see the ball being any higher than that. I think the most important thing for me is that the ball is not any higher. I think if you took, for example, you took you out and the ball went higher, for me, that would be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about not removing judges. Even if as a panel we think that they're slightly off, i.e. that there's 5 of us think that Hugh is a bit far away, it does have an impact on where the choice is. And I think that's important to say, because I think that when the players play this competition, you know, why they'll say, why isn't this player taken out? Why isn't that judge taken out? And I think it's because where the average ends up, we have to be happy with. I'm personally happier with everybody in because of where the average turns up into this smaller field of vision from the blue player. So has anybody got anything further to add on this, or shall we sort of go to a vote about leaving it as it is and using the average?
Where it is as it is now, Matt, for me, even though I feel it's a touch lower, it still makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
all.
So Leo, you're in favour of leaving it as it is. Nigel?
Yeah, I'd say leave it as it is, hearing what the other judges are saying.
Yeah. Hugh?
Yeah, I'm happy with it, with all in.
Kieran?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And Andy?
Yeah, saying, Matt, just before you drew those last lines in,
Yep.
that's where my original vision was. That I couldn't really see him going any lower than that.
No, sure. Okay.
Much higher than
So,
that.
thank you.
For
So,
me is it's pretty good.
A panel choice, we decided to not remove anybody because the judge average position of the choice is in a position where we're all comfortable with and are happy with that selection. So we've judged average. Charlie, we're happy that we've judged the average after a long discussion.
Okay, thanks, Matt. If you could now hit submit. The coordinates selected are 4661182. These coordinates will now be passed to Wilkins Kennedy to calculate the winner of the competition, and they will then inform BOTB. That concludes the judging process. Thank you.